Hello everyone. As we have gone through the APG classes, the last class there was a video on metabolic alkalosis. Today I am going to present seminar on respiratory acidosis and alkalosis. Respiratory acid-base disorders are those abnormalities in acid-base equilibrium that is initiated by a change in the arterial carbon dioxide tension. There are basically two types of respiratory acid-base disorders, that is respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis. The carbon dioxide production in the body is dependent upon mainly VCO2, that is the rate of production, and VA, that is alveolar ventilation. So increase in arterial PCO2 can occur by one of the three mechanisms. One is decreased alveolar ventilation, the major part. Another is increased production of CO2 by the body, and the rarest is excess CO2 in the inspired gas. Acute respiratory acidosis occurs when there is abrupt failure of ventilation. Most cases of respiratory acidosis reflect a decrease in the alveolar ventilation. Overproduction of carbon dioxide is usually matched by increased excretion due to increased alveolar ventilation, such that hypercapnia is prevented. Here is a graph. We can see if there is decrease in the alveolar ventilation, CO2 level increases. The primary response of increased CO2 in body is stimulation of the respiratory center in medulla due to acidic blood that will lead to hyperventilation. The secondary response is adaptive increments in the plasma bicarbonate concentration that attenuates the impact of hypercapnia on systemic acidity. So in acute respiratory acidosis, CO2 levels are elevated from the upper limit of reference range, that is 45 mm of mercury, with an accompanying acidemia. But in chronic respiratory acidosis, CO2 levels will be high, but there will be compensation by elevation of the bicarbonates. So the pH will be normal or near normal. So now coming to the causes. Acute causes that can occur in normal airway and lungs or abnormal airway and lungs. In normal airway and lungs patients, there may be central nervous system depression due to sedative overdose or general anesthesia or any CVA, edema, brain tumor. In neuromuscular impairment like GBS, myasthenic crisis, or any myopathies or drugs or toxins, there will be respiratory acidosis. Ventilator restriction occurs in flail chest or pneumothorax or hemothorax or impaired diaphragmatic function that will lead to hypoventilation leading to CO2 accumulation. Iatrogenic events during airway procedures like bronchoscopy or tracheostomy or any blockage of tube will lead to increased CO2 production. In abnormal airway, upper airway obstruction is the most important aspect. In comatose patients, there is pharyngeal obstruction or maybe due to aspiration or any angioedema, laryngospasm, or in OSA patients. Lower airway obstruction occurs in severe asthma, bronchospasm, bronchiolitis of infants that will lead to increased CO2. Disorders involving pulmonary alveoli like pneumonia, ARDS, pulmonary edema will also cause the same. Perfusion defects in cardiac arrest or massive pulmonary embolism or fat embolism will lead to respiratory acidosis. The acute adaptation actually completes within 5 to 10 minutes of onset of hypercapnia. Acidic titration of the body's non-bicarbonate buffers is the main factor. We can see in the equation, when carbon dioxide is more, it reacts with water to form H2CO3 and there is H+, but the H+ is buffered by non-bicarbonate buffers like hemoglobin, phosphates, and plasma proteins that will lead to compensation of acute acidosis. On average, the plasma bicarbonate concentration increases by about 0.1 milliequivalents per liter for each 1 mm acute rise in CO2. In acute respiratory acidosis, the expected change in pH is around 0.008 into 40 minus PCO2. Now coming to the chronic causes, that is also divided into normal airway and lung and abnormal airway and lungs. In normal airway, The central nervous system depression, like in sedative overdose or any chronic addiction or in primary alveolar hypoventilation or OHS, that will lead to acidosis. Neuromuscular impairments like diseases in polio, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophies, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, diaphragmatic paralysis, myxedema. In ventilatory restrictions, kyphoscoliosis, obesity, hydrothorax, fibrothorax all will lead to respiratory acidosis. In abnormal airway, upper airway obstruction like tonsillar and peritonsillar hypertrophy, paralysis of vocal cords, tumors of cord, airway stenosis, lower airway obstruction like bronchitis, bronchiolitis, any COPD, emphysema will lead to respiratory acidosis. And severe pneumonitis, diffuse infiltrative disease, and interstitial lung disease will lead to acidosis. Chronic adaptation occurs in 3 to 5 days of sustained hypercapnia. The kidney is the major site that helps in adaptation by increasing the urinary acid excretion and increasing the rate of renal bicarbonate reabsorption. On average, plasma bicarbonate concentration increases by about 0.4 milliequivalents per liter for each millimeter mercury of increment in CO2. In chronic respiratory acidosis, the expected change in pH is 0.003 into 40 minus PCO2. Thus, at a given CO2 value, chronic adaptation provides the better defense of systemic acidity than the acute adaptation. The renal response to chronic hypercapnia includes a transient increase in chloride excretion and generation of the hypochloremia. This reduction in the chloride concentration balances the increase in the plasma bicarbonate concentration. So the plasma anion gap remains unchanged. Now coming to the clinical features, the most important and common feature is neurological, that is hypercapnic encephalopathy. Irritability, inability to concentrate, headache, apathy, confusion, combativeness, hallucinations, psychosis, narcosis, and finally coma. In motor disturbances, there may be flapping tremors, myoclonic jars, and seizures. The occurrence of these features depend on the magnitude of hypercapnia, the rapidity with which it develops, the severity of acidemia, and the degree of accompanying hypoxemia. All these will determine the neurological symptoms. In cardiovascular symptoms, there is inhibition of myocardial contractility. There is direct systemic vasodilation that will lead to increased cardiac output, normal or increased BP, and increased cerebral blood flow in mild to moderate hypercapnia. But in severe hypercapnia, there is definite decrease in the cardiac output and blood pressure that is significant. And the renal effects, there is salt and water retention in chronic hypercapnia. It may occur due to stimulation of beta adrenergic system and the renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. The increasing level of ADH and cortisol will also lead to water retention. How we diagnose the respiratory acidosis? It requires the measurement of PaCO2 and arterial pH, and it can be done by ABG analysis. The detailed history and physical examination may indicate the preliminary cause. Pulmonary function tests, including spirometry, diffusion capacity for carbon monoxide, and lung volumes, will help in identifying the primary disease. For non-pulmonary causes, a detailed drug history, measurement of the hematocrit, assessment of the upper airway, the chest wall, pleura, and neuromuscular function is important. In ABG, there is a definite rise in PCO2. In acute respiratory failure, the pH is low as there is no compensation. Bicarbonate is high normal or slightly raised as compensatory changes take some time to occur. In chronic respiratory failure, the pH is near normal due to compensation and bicarbonate is raised. Now coming to the management of respiratory acidosis. Primarily, the treatment is the underlying disorder we have to manage, and pathophysiological, that process we have to reverse. Caution should be exercised in the correction of chronic hypercapnia because too rapid correction of hypercapnia result in post-hypercapnic alkalosis. it will lead to alkalization of the CSF that may cause seizures. There are various drug therapies for the primary disease. Like in asthma and COPD, we may use bronchodilators like beta agonist, anticholinergic agents, and methylxanthines. They will lead to relaxation of the airway, and there will not be any retention of CO2. And drug antagonists of opioids and benzodiazepines are available. We may use to reverse the overdose. Various respiratory stimulants previously we used, but nowadays it is not that useful, like medroxyprogesterone, acetate, acetazolamide, theophylline. Oxygen therapy is a definitive treatment. In many patients of hypercapnia, there is also associated hypoxemia. So we can target a low normal level of PaO2, that is around 60 to 65 millimeter of mercury, and the SpO2 target should be around 88 to 92%, as in COPD patients. And the definitive support is ventilatory support. In severe hypercapnia or respiratory acidosis, we have to intubate the patient and put on mechanical ventilation, or in COPD OSA patients, we can give NIV, CPAP, BiPAP, or PEEP support. Now the next one is respiratory alkalosis. It is a acid-base disturbance that is initiated by the reduction of CO2, just reverse of respiratory acidosis. It occurs when there is excessive loss of CO2 by hyperventilation of the lungs. It develops when a sufficiently strong ventilatory stimulus causes CO2 excretion in the lungs that exceeds the metabolic production by the tissues. As a result, partial pressure of CO2 and hydrogen ion concentration falls, so there is also a compensatory decrease in the bicarbonate level. Primary decrease in the CO2 production are generally attended by a parallel decrease in the alveolar ventilation in normal lung, thus preventing expression of the respiratory alkalosis. But in the presence of constant alveolar ventilation, like mechanical ventilation, decreased carbon dioxide production can cause respiratory alkalosis. If the patient is on sedation, or there is hypothyroidism or hypothermia, or patient is being paralyzed, there is constant hypoventilation and there will be low CO2 production. Respiratory alkalosis alkalinizes the body fluids. This adaptive decrements in plasma bicarbonate concentration attenuate the impact of hypocapnia. These decrements in the plasma bicarbonate should be viewed as an integral part of the respiratory alkalosis. Now the causes. The causes may be due to hypoxemia or tissue hypoxia, may be due to stimulation of the chest receptors, may be due to central nervous system stimulation, may be due to drug overdose, and miscellaneous. In hypoxia and hypoxemia, the main causes are pneumonia, aspiration, spasm, cyanotic heart disease, circulatory failure, anemia. And in pneumonia, asthma, pneumothorax, hemothorax, flail chest, there is stimulation of the chest receptors that will lead to excess ventilation. Central nervous system stimulation in pain, anxiety, psychosis, SAH, CVA, meningoencephalitis will cause hyperventilation. Drugs like salicylates, angiotensin II, hormones like progesterone will also lead to hyperventilation. And in pregnancy, sepsis, mechanical hyperventilation, heat exposure, all will lead to hyperventilation leading to CO2 wash out. So now the adaptation. In acute adaptation, it is completed within 5 to 10 minutes, as in respiratory acidosis from the onset of hypocapnia. It originates primarily from the alkaline titration of the body's non-bicarbonate buffers like hemoglobin, phosphates, and plasma proteins. We can see the H buffer produces hydrogen ion and buffer minus. This hydrogen ion will buffer the bicarbonate so that there will be production of H2CO3, which will be eventually converted into H2O and CO2. Hence, the acidic component will be, the basic component will be buffered. On average, the plasma bicarbonate concentration falls by about 0.2 milliequivalents per liter for each millimeter of mercury acute decrement in the CO2 level. And the change in pH will be around 0.008 into 40 minus pCO2. In chronic adaptation, it takes around 2 to 3 days of sustained hypocapnia for completion. It occurs by down regulation of the renal acidification mechanisms, both in the proximal and distal segments. It occurs by transient decrease in the urinary acid excretion, mostly by fall in ammonium excretion and early component of bicarbonate excretion. And also there is persistent decrease in the rate of renal bicarbonate reabsorption that maintains the decreased plasma bicarbonate level. Hence, there will be compensation. On average, the plasma bicarbonate concentration decreases by about 0.4 milliequivalents per liter for each millimeter of mercury chronic decrement in the PaCO2 level. So the change in pH will be around 0.017 into 40 minus PaCO2. Thus, at a given CO2 level, chronic adaptation provides better defense of systemic acidity than acute adaptation. The clinical features vary accordingly to the severity and duration, but are primarily those due to underlying diseases. Major manifestations are neurological. The rapid decrement in CO2 will cause paresthesia of extremities, chest discomfort, circumoral numbness, lightheadedness, confusion, and infrequently tetany if there is decrease in the calcium levels and generalized seizures. But these manifestations are seldom present in the chronic phase. Acute hypocapnia causes cerebral vasodilation and decreases the cerebral blood flow. In severe cases, it may reach up to level of less than 50% of normal, but flow essentially normalizes during the sustained hypercapnia. So definitely the acute phase is bad, but chronic hypercapnia won't cause that much of differences. In cardiovascular system also, there is no appreciable changes in the cardiac output, systemic blood pressure, and rhythm in acute hyperventilating subjects. Major reduction of cardiac output and BP and substantial hyperlactatemia frequently occurs in passively hyperventilating patients, as in during mechanical ventilation, most likely reflecting the decreased venous return associated with the mechanical ventilation. But in patients with coronary artery disease, they might suffer hypocapnia-induced coronary vasoconstriction that will result in angina pectoris and various arrhythmias. So diagnosis mainly based on ABG. It requires the measurement of PaCO2 and arterial pH. Plasma potassium level is often reduced and CO2 is always reduced. Severe cases, ionized calcium is also low. Bicarbonate is usually low or not low normal. pH is raised or normal in compensated phases. The chloride is increased to compensate for the alkalosis. Treatment primarily directed at correcting the underlying disorder. Alkalosis is itself rarely life-threatening. Emergency treatment is usually mandated if there is severe alkalosis and the pH is greater than 7.5. Because the alkalosis usually occurs in response to some stimulus, treatment is often unsuccessful unless the stimulus is controlled. So, if the CO2 is corrected rapidly in patients with chronic respiratory alkalosis, metabolic acidosis may develop due to renal compensatory drop in the serum bicarbonate. In mechanically ventilated patients who have respiratory alkalosis, the tidal volume and respiratory rate may need to be decreased in order to maintain the adequate ventilation. Inadequate sedation and pain control may contribute to respiratory alkalosis in patient breathing over the set ventilator rate. So, adequate sedation and analgesia reassurance may help in these patients. Thank you.